The cabin and the girl. The mountains loomed like sleeping beasts against the twilight sky, their peaks swallowed in fog and silence. Every hoofbeat of Elias Granger's horse echoed through the pines like a heartbeat in the emptiness. He'd been riding since dawn, and the farther he climbed, the lonelier the trail became. He carried little, a saddlebag, a rifle, a flask half empty of whiskey, and the deed to a place nobody in town wanted. The lonely cabin, they called it. Old Man Cotter in Dunridge had smirked when Elias handed over the cash. That cabin's been empty 3 winters now, Cotter had said. Some say cursed. Some say haunted. Either way, you'll have plenty of peace up there. Peace. That was all Elias wanted. After the war, after the graves, after the woman who'd walked out and left him nothing but a name he couldn't say without bleeding inside, peace sounded like a miracle. He had no kin left, no debts, just the need to disappear into the mountains and start again. The trail narrowed to a frozen path clinging to the ridge. His horse, Sable, snorted clouds of breath into the thin air. The sun dipped lower, painting the snow in bruised gold and violet. Then he saw it, a small clearing ahead, smoke curling from a stone chimney. Elias slowed the horse, frowning. He hadn't expected anyone here. The deed said the place had been abandoned since Cotter's uncle froze to death up here years ago. Yet smoke meant fire. Fire meant life. He dismounted, boots crunching in the snow, hand resting on the rifle slung across his back. The cabin stood half-buried in drifts, rough-hewn logs, shutters hanging crooked, the porch sagging under years of weather. But from inside came the unmistakable glow of firelight. Elias called out, "Hello in the cabin." No answer. He stepped up onto the porch, the boards groaning beneath his weight. Before he could knock, the door opened. A young woman stood there, barely 20, maybe less, wrapped in a shawl too thin for the cold, her skin pale, her eyes dark and steady like wet river stones. Her hair fell loose over her shoulders, black as the pine shadows behind her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said, quietly, "You're late." Elias blinked. "Late?" She nodded, stepping aside. "I've been waiting." Inside was warm, surprisingly so. A fire roared in the hearth, casting long amber light across the log walls. A kettle hissed softly on the iron hook, and the scent of pine resin hung in the air. Elias kept his hand near the rifle, unsure. "You live here?" She shook her head. "No, I only kept it ready." "For who?" Her gaze rose to his, and something unreadable passed through her eyes. "For you." That answer twisted through him like wind through the trees. "I don't understand," he said. "You bought the cabin," she murmured, moving to stir the fire. "It belongs to you now. But my father said someone would come, a man carrying a burden heavier than wood or gold. He said I should wait and keep the fire burning until he did." Her voice was soft, but steady, like she was reciting something memorized long ago. Elias set down his rifle, unease prickling his neck. "Your father, who was he?" "Jonas Vale," she said. "He built this cabin before I was born. He died last winter." Elias searched his memory. Cotter's uncle's name had been Jonas Vale. That checked out. So she was real, not a ghost, not some mountain superstition. Still, the question burned. "And you've been living here alone since then?" She nodded. "The mountain looks after me." Her calmness unsettled him more than fear would have. He'd seen women hardened by hardship before, but this was something else, like she belonged to the place more than to herself. "What's your name?" he asked. Mara Vale." "Yes." He sighed, rubbing his hands before the fire. "Well, Mara Vale, I didn't expect company. But thank you for keeping the place from falling apart." She only nodded. When she brought him tea, he noticed her hands, rough, scarred, and cold despite the fire. "You should rest," she said. "You've been riding long." Elias gave a half-smile. "You sound like my mother used to." At that, a flicker of sadness crossed her face. "Then she must have cared for you." He didn't reply. Later that night, while she slept curled on a small cot near the window, Elias lay awake by the fire. The logs popped softly, and snow whispered against the shutters. Something about her words kept turning in his mind. "My father said someone would come, carrying a burden heavier than wood or gold." What burden? And why had she waited for him? He rose, moving quietly to the window. The world outside was silver under the moon. Endless pines, the creek glinting like glass, the peaks beyond lost in cloud. Then he heard it, a faint sound carried on the wind. A voice, low, broken, calling a name. "Mara." Elias froze. It wasn't his imagination. The sound came from the trees beyond the clearing. He reached for his rifle and stepped to the door, opening it just enough to peer into the night. Nothing but darkness and snow. Yet the voice came again, softer, closer. "Mara." Behind him, the girl stirred. "Don't go out there." He turned. She was awake, sitting up, eyes wide and frightened for the first time. "You heard it too?" he asked. She nodded. "It's only the wind," she whispered quickly, though her trembling said otherwise. It sounds like him sometimes. Ooh, she didn't answer. Elias closed the door slowly and sat by the fire again, rifle across his knees. Mara lay back down, pretending to sleep. But long after the voice faded, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching through the cracks in the shutters. Morning brought clear light and silence. The storm clouds had passed, leaving a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Elias stepped outside, feeling the brutal cold bite his lungs. He walked around the cabin, half expecting to see footprints, but the snow was unbroken. Still, he couldn't shake that voice. When he came back in, Mara was by the hearth, humming a tune that didn't sound like anything from the lowlands' old, mournful wild. That song, he said. Where'd you learn it? My father taught me. He said it keeps the mountain calm. Elias snorted lightly. Never met a mountain that needed calming. You haven't met this one. He studied her. You talk like the mountain's alive. She met his eyes. It is. Something in the way she said it made him stop. She rose, brushing ash from her skirt. He said you'd ask questions, she murmured. But the answers have to come from up there. She pointed toward the ridge above the valley, where a narrow path cut through the pines, winding into the mist. What's up there? Elias asked. The place where he made the promise, she said, and where he broke it. Before he could speak again, she added quietly, and where you'll have to finish it. The rest of the day passed in heavy silence. Elias worked, chopping wood, mending the stable roof, fetching water from the half-frozen creek. Mara moved like a shadow around the cabin, always watching the mountains, always listening. At sunset, as he stacked the wood by the wall, she appeared beside him. You should know something, she said. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. Go on. My father used to say the mountain gives what it wants, and takes what it's owed. What's it owed? She hesitated, eyes distant. A life, maybe. He frowned. Whose life? She looked at him then, and the air seemed to thicken between them. That's what you'll have to find out. Then she turned and walked back inside. That night, Elias dreamed. He saw the cabin as it was long ago. New, clean, smoke rising against a bright summer sky. A man stood on the porch, broad-shouldered, bearded, hammer in hand. Jonas Vale. Beside him, a little girl laughed, chasing a silver locket that glinted in the sun. Then thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from the ground. The mountain cracked open, swallowing light and laughter alike. When Elias jolted awake, the fire was out. The room was dark except for the faint glow of dawn creeping through the cracks. Mara was gone. The door stood ajar, snow drifting in. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. There, near the creek, she stood barefoot in the frost, facing the rising sun. The air around her shimmered faintly, like the breath of something unseen. Elias called out, You'll freeze to death out there. She turned slowly, eyes calm, voice barely a whisper. The mountain won't let me. He didn't ask for more that day. Something told him the truth would come, but not in words. The mountain waited, watching. And deep inside the cabin, beneath the floorboards, the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Because what Elias Granger didn't yet know was this. The cabin he'd bought wasn't a home. It was a debt, one written in blood, waiting for its payment. The hidden promise. The next morning, the air was so still Elias could hear the snow falling from the trees. The silence was heavier than before, almost listening. Mara was sitting by the hearth, turning something small in her hands, a silver locket, dull from age. She looked up when Elias entered, her expression unreadable. You didn't sleep, he said. I don't eat much, she replied softly. He poured himself coffee from the pot on the stove, watching her over the rim of his cup. That locket means something? She hesitated. It's all that's left of my mother. She died when I was little. My father said it belonged to her family before she came to the mountain. Elias nodded. You've lost a lot. She looked into the fire. Everyone who stays here does. Her words cut through the quiet like a knife. Outside, the wind began to pick up, whispering against the logs. Elias couldn't stand the tension pressing on his chest any longer. Tell me the rest, he said finally. About your father. About this promise you keep talking around. Mara didn't move for a moment. Then she said, he wasn't always a good man. The mountain changed him. How so? He came here looking for gold. Said the land had veins of it, hidden under the river rock. But when he found some, he didn't find it alone. She turned toward him, eyes dark and glassy. He had a partner. They built this cabin together. But when they struck gold, he wanted it all for himself. Elias' stomach sank. What happened to the partner? Her voice dropped to a whisper. He never left the mountain. The wind groaned outside. The fire cracked, throwing sparks across the stone hearth. Mara went on. My father buried the gold somewhere up there. She gestured toward the ridge, and the man's body along with it. After that, he was never the same. He said the mountain wouldn't forgive him, not till the gold was returned. She clutched the locket tighter. He said when he died, The man he wronged would come for him. And if he couldn't take my father, he'd take me instead. Elias exhaled. That's the hidden promise, then. He promised to return what he stole. She nodded. And he didn't. Elias spent the day walking the property, boots sinking deep into the snow. He needed to see the land with his own eyes. The old well, the shed, the frozen creek. Everything felt off. The cabin sat on ground that looked disturbed, as if it had once been dug up and covered again. When he knelt near the porch, brushing away snow, he noticed a few boards looser than the rest. Beneath them, a faint hollow sound. He pried one up with the back of his knife. Underneath lay a small leather pouch, stiff with age and rot. He pulled it free and unwrapped it. Inside, beneath a layer of cloth, were gold flakes and coins, dull but unmistakable. He froze. Mara's story was true. He could feel it, that wrongness, that weight, like the air itself thickened with judgment. He replaced the pouch and covered it quickly, but even as he nailed the boards back, the thought wouldn't leave him. Someone had died for this. That night, the storm returned. The wind screamed across the peaks, rattling the shutters like bones. Elias sat by the fire, rifle in hand, the gold pouch on the table beside him. Mara paced near the door, her shadow long and thin across the wall. He won't stop now, she murmured. Who won't? Elias asked. She turned slowly toward him. The man my father wronged. He comes with the storm. Thunder cracked, shaking the roof. Elias stood, checking the rifle. Ain't no ghost can walk through a bullet. Mara didn't smile. You can't shoot what isn't flesh. Then came the footsteps, heavy, slow, circling the cabin. Elias threw open the door and stepped into the snow, the wind cutting like knives. The trees bent and groaned under the weight of ice. For a moment, nothing. Then movement. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, half shrouded in snow and shadow. Tall, broad, dripping with frost. Who's there? Elias shouted. The figure didn't move. Lightning flashed. And in that heartbeat of white light, Elias saw a man's face pale as stone, eyes hollow, beard frozen stiff. Then he was gone. Elias fired once, the sound cracking through the storm. Nothing. When he turned, Mara stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. The storm didn't stop until morning. When the first weak light broke through the clouds, Elias stepped outside. His footprints from the night before were gone. But another set remained, circling the cabin and ending at the door. He knelt, touched the prints. They were deep, too deep for snow that fresh. He came back inside. Mara sat by the hearth, pale but calm, as if she'd been waiting for him to see. You believe me now, she said. Elias nodded grimly. I do. Then it's time. Time for what? To end it. By noon, they were climbing. The ridge loomed above like the spine of the world, steep and unforgiving. Snow stung their faces, and the wind howled like a living thing. Mara led the way, moving with strange ease, as if she knew every stone and turn. Elias followed, the gold pouch in his coat. After an hour, the trees thinned, and they came to a cave mouth black as a wound in the mountainside. This is where he made the promise, Mara said quietly. Elias lit a lantern and followed her inside. The air was colder than death. The walls glittered faintly with veins of gold, winding through the stone like frozen fire. At the far end lay a small stone altar, rough but deliberate. Mara knelt before it. This is where he buried the man. Elias set the pouch on the stone. Then we'll return what's his. He untied it and emptied the contents. Gold clinked against the altar, dull and heavy. Then from the shadows came a whisper, low, rasping, too close. Too late. Elias spun, rifle raised, but the shadows moved first. A shape formed out of the dark, tall and terrible, its eyes like burning ice. The ghost of the partner, bound to the greed that killed him. Mara cried out, clutching her locket. Please, it's over. The golds returned. The specter loomed over her, voice like the grinding of stone. A life for a life. It reached for her, and Elias moved without thinking. He stepped between them, pulling the trigger. The shot roared through the cave, but instead of fire, there was silence. The ghost froze, the light in its eyes dimming. Elias fell to his knees, the rifle dropping beside him. Mara caught him, shaking. Elias. No. He smiled faintly, blood blooming dark against his shirt. Guess the mountain got what it was owed. The ghost faded into mist, swirling upward until nothing remained but cold air and gold dust. Mara held Elias close, tears falling on his face. You kept the promise, she whispered. He reached up weakly, touching the locket around her neck. "You keep it safe. Don't let it start again." Then his hand fell, and the cave went still. When spring came, the snow melted from the peaks. Travelers from Dunridge spoke of a girl seen, sometimes near the ridge, long dark hair, singing to the river as she gathered wildflowers. And they said the cabin no longer looked lonely. Smoke rose from a chimney again, warm and steady. No one saw the man who lived there, but at night, if you stood by the creek, you could hear a deep voice humming softly from inside, a tune older than the mountains themselves. Some swore it was the wind. Others said it was Elias Granger, still keeping his promise beside the mountain's daughter.